actually, by the way, for just putting this putting this group together. Another way to network, and I know a lot of the people that are in this room right now, and happy to share some knowledge. And there's some really experienced investors in here, so I'm glad to be here to share with you guys. Been in multifamily since 2018. And we sort of fell into RV parks, if you will, last year, but I think you create your own luck, right? And the way you create your luck is, for me personally, is through relationships. I'm big on just connecting with people, trying to put others together, even if I'm not a part of something that someone else is trying to accomplish or I can't help them. And literally that's how we got into the space. I'll just share a little bit about that because I think it's so important. And then we can talk more about the specifics of how we purchase and things like that. But Penny, now my fiance, had an acquaintance that I had a conversation with. We were out one night and she figured out what I did. And lo and behold, probably a month later, I get a random text. Hey, are you interested in an RV park? At that time, we had never, ever considered an RV park. This was last April, I believe. And I said, sure, why not? Send me the numbers. Sent us the numbers. We had to learn how to underwrite them. And we did that by calling on a colleague that was already in the space, managing some RV parks and being very successful at it. So once we did that and realized we might have an opportunity on our hands, when I got in front of the, basically the financial controller for this one park in the Smoky Mountains area of beautiful Wares Valley, Tennessee, the park never got listed. It was going to be listed, but once we got to know each other, it never got listed. And then on that particular one, so we're partners in 4, and on 3 of them, we partnered with someone that has experience in managing them and had a management team in place. And this last one that we purchased in June, we bought on our own and we self-manage it. We learned how to manage it. We lived there on site, hired a couple to manage it. This is a mom and pop type deal, as we say in multifamily as well. It was purchased 11 years ago from the person we bought it from, and he was already retired. So he ran it more like a hobby. So he was just letting money go out the window. And that was another opportunity where we got in front of the seller. He wanted an all cash offer, but I told that same broker, this is the second opportunity I'm actually speaking about now after we closed the first one. I said, just get me in front of the guy. And he said, if you can promise me I'll never have to walk into a bank, let's do this deal. And we gave him his number, and that's what we did. And the rest is history as far as that fourth one goes. Feel free to stop me along the way because I like interaction. Just ask me any question. Unless, Valerie, you choose to do it at the end, like you mentioned before. Here's the great thing about RV parks. We also looked at mobile home space back in 2018. We're always sort of looking at that, but that's not really our bread and butter focus. You know, sometimes once you've been in multifamily for a little while, you learn a little bit about some other classes, you realize you could go do some other things. But my point of bringing up mobile home parks is 5 or 6 years ago, that was one of the hot asset classes, picking off mom and pop type mobile home parks. Then when family office money and institutional money found out about how great those returns were, they would come in and pay stupid money for them, and maybe still do. We feel like we're ahead of that in the RV space at this time. We think it will go that way, but we feel like right now you're still able to purchase just with some direct to seller marketing, whatever that looks like. And we bought a couple that were listed. But we feel like there's not as many players in the game currently in that space. So we're continuing to look for them. And with what's going on in the financial market and interest rates, obviously you're sort of just, with our current business, multifamily RV parks, we are just trying to make our systems and processes more efficient as far as self-management goes. We're always looking, but as most of you know that purchase inside this group, it's currently difficult just based on lending and sellers still thinking they can get top dollar in this market. So we're still looking. couple of the reasons we like RV parks that are different than multifamily. Cash on cash is generally almost always higher out of the gate. I think the 4 parks that we own, the minimum cash on cash day one after takeover was 11. And those have just, that numbers just continue to go up with all of them. Bonus depreciation through cost segregation studies are almost dollar per dollar. So if you're putting in 100K, you're probably getting back almost 100K on your taxes that first year. That's something we were not aware of. And you think to yourself, wow, it's just mostly land. There's a lot of infrastructure in the ground, electric, plumbing. A lot of existing parks have septic systems, depending on how old they are or who owned them previously. Those systems can be very simple to very sophisticated with treatment facility, alarms on the septic if something was to go wrong, things of that nature. Most of your nice RV parks have a pool house, have a bathhouse, maybe another house on the property that also gets taken into the depreciation for management to live as well. One other thing we've learned is marketing is huge in this industry. A lot of ones we bought maybe had a website but did not have a social media presence. And as we know today, no matter what you own, if you're trying to get people into it, whether it's apartments or RV parks, you've got to have a marketing presence. You've got to be investing in the right softwares. CampSpot is the go-to software for RV parks. We bought that, learned it. Our managers know how to use it. Another thing that's important in RV park space is dynamic pricing. Your occupancy is one of the most important numbers in RV parks at any given point in time. Obviously, it is in multifamily as well, but even more so in RV parks, because you can have a long-term RV park where people pay a monthly rate. You can also have a transitory park where people stay 1 night, 2 nights, 3 a week, something along those lines. If you see you have an opening coming up and you're having trouble filling that spot, you need to have the ability to lower that price at any point in time, daily, weekly, monthly, whatever that is, to occupy it, to get some type of revenue coming in. CampSpot allows you to do that. So you try to take as much out of your hands as possible, so that just occurs automatically. I wrote down some notes here to see what else I was going to talk about. That's a very quick synopsis. Just one thing we've seen, and I just sent an article to our partners this morning. Emphasizing the long-term need. People are using this for housing, especially people that travel for their jobs, traveling nurses, linemen that work on power poles. That was the article I sent this morning. The reason they like going to an RV park, pulling their camper, driving their RV there, because they know they're going to be there for 6 months, is number one, they're having a hard time finding any other place to rent, and it's more affordable, but they still all have the comforts of home. It's their space, they own it. They're not just renting 4 walls inside an apartment complex. They own their camper, they're comfortable, they can bring their children, they can bring their spouses. A lot of these people are making 6-figure incomes. So in some cases, you have married people or couples that have children, only one works, and this is the lifestyle they choose. So they're looking for a long-term space. They still have the use of all the facilities at these places, and most RV parks are not always a destination in themselves, although that's a great asset to buy if you can make the RV park itself a destination. But they're around a lot of areas that are destination spots for vacationers or what have you. If someone's living there and they have the weekends free, they can go enjoy those things. Whereas really their home is 6 to 12 hours away. They couldn't do that if they weren't staying at this RV park long term. So that's another enticement, if you will, for long-term stays. And we're just now getting to that point where we're starting to do that at this 4th one in Townsend, Tennessee, on the other side of the Smokies. So, and you've got to figure that market out. If you don't already know it, most of these previous owners that you're buying these from, their marketing was not dynamic, their pricing was not dynamic. They're just there. Hey, I hope enough people drive by, and maybe they have a website, but they're not on Facebook, they're not on social media, they're not on Campendium, some other websites. Good Sam. If for those of you that know anything about RVs, Good Sam is a name out there that sort of has their name on properties. And if you're a member, you can get a 10% discount at certain parks, things like that. KOA is an example of an awesome marketing company, how they market theirs now. So it's extremely, extremely important that you're spending money on marketing and that you're making the best use of it. Gosh, that was a lot quickly. That's about it, really. I can answer questions now or whatever we're gonna do.
I got a question, Darren. How
Go
are
ahead,
you,
man.
brother?
I'm awesome. It's great to see you.
Absolutely. It's good to see you. How, excuse me, are we valuing RV parks off a multiple or a cap rate?
Ah, man, that's
How
a
are you
Greg
guys
Scully.
underwriting them?
That's a Greg Scully question.
I'll answer Monday night then.
Yeah, no, I'd say more so equity multiple. Yeah, obviously there's always a cap rate sneaking around, but I couldn't rattle off one right now for you specifically for RV parks wherever we are. It's generally usually off an equity multiple. So I think in our case, we're talking 2.5 to 3 times. So, you know, multifamily now, if you're able to get a deal, you're talking what, 1.7 to 2.5 if you're lucky.
Yeah.
Now, if anybody's doing better than that, great, good for them. That's just kind of what we've seen recently. I hope that answers your question.
Spot on. Thank you.
Glad.
Darren, quick question. So with the current, I mean, before gas prices were like really high, and obviously with COVID a year back, did you notice a huge drop off in your RV parks that people travel less because, you know, they have to go with those big rigs? And...
Yeah. Your question reminded me of another point I want to make. One of the point of research we did before we participated and purchased the first one was, you know, we were in 2021, right? We were in the middle of COVID. So what we do know about COVID in relation to RV parks is basically that number was an anomaly. It was so extremely high occupancy and attendance and people wanting to get out of their homes and deciding I'm not going to work at a hospital anymore. I'm going to be a travel nurse, and because I can make this amount of money and I don't want to be in that situation anymore. From 2010, I've got it somewhere. I could email it to Valerie and you guys could get it. 2010, and I think maybe 08, 09, 010, but the study was from 2010. From 2010 till now, year over year, RV ownership in America has increased 3 to 7% year over year. So when we first got into it, we thought to ourselves, okay, is COVID the reason this is happening? No, you look back that many years, you realize it was already happening. And so that what we do is when we underwrite one currently, we take the COVID year underwriting numbers and we don't use it. We'll put a little bit of thought into it, especially if it's always going to be better than 2020, because that's when everybody wanted to get out of the house. And that's what happened. That number shot through the roof. So not only did occupancy shoot through the roof, but ownership for 2021 shot through the roof. But because we know that statistic, 37% year over year increase in ownership since 2010, that trend is just going to continue. So that's kind of why that was the basis for us to go, all right, this is not going away. Did that answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
Hey, good morning, Darren.
Oh,
I'm sorry.
One more point. Sorry, Sip. One more point is what we've learned, and this may be just in my mind, management to me is easier in an RV park than it is multifamily. And the reason I say that is when people go to an RV park, even if they are there for their job, they are there to relax. They come there with a relaxed state of mind. I know there's some fellow RVers in here. And even though, you know, maybe they're having to get on their laptop occasionally, they're still in this relaxed environment. If something goes wrong, generally it's with their camper or their RV, not necessarily the park. Yeah, things can go wrong in the park and that happens. But if you have an apartment tenant and their toilet breaks, you cannot get there fast enough. If their sink stops up, you cannot get there fast enough. It's just a different, and it does not matter your socioeconomic status level. People all come there for the same reason. And so I think just from a mindset perspective, it seems to me that it's easier to manage people that way, for whatever that's worth. Okay, Sip, I'm sorry.
It's okay. Good morning, everyone. And thank you, Darren, for taking this time today. And thank you, Valerie, for putting this together. I was wondering what the lending appetite on these assets are. Are you going mostly creative financing, like owner financing and such, or are you actually getting loans from banks on these?
We're getting loans, as most of you know, the mobile home park space. There's always that huge appetite for owner financing. Obviously, we would do owner financing if the opportunity presented itself, but there's a few lending brokers out there that specialize in this space, but we have a community bank in Greenville, Tennessee, which is between the Tri-Cities and Knoxville, if anyone knows the 81 corridor. This bank was literally started around the year 2000 with 9 gentlemen that threw 100K in. And so it's true community bank. So here's the basic terms we got on the most recent purchase. It was 85% LTV. We got 18 months interest only at 3.65. We would have gotten 3.5, but it had started to tick up at that point. This was June 6th, we closed. And that will roll to, I want to say 4.3, 4.4 for a 5-year term. I think it's a 20-year AM. It might be a 25. So when you think about that, 85% LTV, it's almost unheard of. And so I've talked to him about a couple others. I've financed some condos from him recently, and sort of when I started my real estate journey back in the day, it kind of all goes back to relationships again. We were looking at a much larger one here in the area, and at just probably a week, 10 days ago, I told the owner, hey, if we can't sell it to me at this price, I'm afraid it's not going to appraise. He supposedly had another offer, but the two banks that I know the best as far as community goes, their lending limits were only so much. They're actually trying to come together to see if they can make something work with that one purchase amount.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Darren, I have a couple of questions.
Okay.
So one thing is for the zoning, the difference between RV parks and mobile home parks. Is there a difference in the zoning for that, or is it the same?
Mobile home parks and RV parks?
Mm-hmm.
I think it's the same. Don't quote me on that. I see Lizzie Hobbs on here, and I'm glad she's on here. She might be able to answer that question, but I think for the most part, they're the same. One thing that we've experienced is a lot of RV parks are near water, natural water, not a man-made pond or things of that nature, although that's a great feature to put on a new development RV park. And so therefore, they're in some type of flood zone. And if you're in Tennessee, some of you may or may not know that in 2010-ish timeframe, we had a 100-year flood. Downtown Nashville got flooded. A lot of places got wiped out down there. So it affected Nashville all over the eastern part of Tennessee. So because of that, the 100-year floodplain was actually expanded. And in this particular park, we have a flood policy, and two of them, we have a flood policy. I know you didn't ask that question specifically, but and multifamily, if we have something in a flood zone, that's top of the list. We don't even look any further. So zoning, I want to say though, maybe not be the same. Ours might have been zoned. I think there's a designation in Tennessee zoned as recreational. So therefore, our mobile homes more.
Darren, you froze for just a minute. I'm not sure what your question was.
Sorry. Are mobile homes zoned commercial, or what's their designation generally?
You asking me now?
I'm asking anyone, yeah.
Generally, I think they're going to have a residential, some form of a residential zoning. But more along the lines of the multifamily and commercial. You can have some that are recreational zoning or have a specialty for recreational zoning. Your guys have the long-term leases, so they are going to have some form of a residential requirement.
Yeah. One other thing that's important to know as you're doing your due diligence on an RV park is a lot of older owners have in the past sold off individual lots to create cash flow or to just have some cash. And at this particular park we bought in June, there's 6 that are privately owned. So each space actually has its own tax parcel. There's a whole other dynamic that comes into play there. When you've got a great lawyer like Lindsay, great title person like Jen Johnston, you've got to put all that stuff together, make sure your surveys are right. You have to have, we don't have HOAs. We have a user agreement for those people that own those lots, and you know, they're using your electricity, they're using your water. What's the trade-off there as far as dollars for them to be able to do that? That's another thing to consider. You don't have it everywhere, but I've seen it probably more the ones we've looked at than not.
And Darren, one more question I had. One park that I went to over the summer, it was so neat. And so they had, that was one question about the zoning, because they did have a chunk of pads that were just for RVs. And then they had tiny homes that kind of wrapped around. And so it was one management, you know, same pool, and it was the same site, but they broke it up in those 2 facets or whatever. And this was close to Orlando, and the majority of the RV, the people bringing in the RVs were yearly rentals, where they were renting the spaces per year. So I just didn't know, from your perspective, have you seen that where you're at in your markets, where they're bringing in the tiny homes with the RVs and trying to go hybrid in that manner?
Yes, because whether the RV space is rented annually or monthly or weekly, tiny homes are incredibly popular where we are, just because you can bring in higher revenue. You can charge $125 a night for a tiny home, as opposed to an RV, depending on size, you're charging anywhere from 65 to 85, depending on time of year, somewhere around there. You can get close to 100 depending on the site and the size, but the tiny homes, and that's another reason people like to have water on their property, is they like to put those tiny homes on the edge of water. We have 3 cabins at the one we bought in June, along with the however 40 other lots that we have. So we charge $125 a night to $135. There's 1 small one and 2 larger ones. And we are actually about to, at one of our other properties, there's 5 cabins, and I think we rent those off of Airbnb separate from the reservation system for the regular RV spots. And I think we're about to do the same, because we feel like we're losing some opportunity. People want to stay in the cabin. Sometimes they just want to stay in the cabin, and they've got a river they can walk down to where we are in Townsend and hang out, enjoy the river. So that's another way we're going to start marketing those. So I don't really know the answer to your question in regards to, hey, if you've got RVs and tiny homes, is part of the parcel zoned differently? I'm not sure, to be honest.
Thank you.
All right. Well, hey, Darren, I really appreciate this. Is fantastic. This is so interesting to me. I've had kind of an interest, but now I really have an interest.
Awesome.
But yeah, if anybody still wants more information, reach out to Darren. I'm sure he'll put his information in the chat, and you can contact him for further info.